Looking ahead to next week's Jobs and Skills Summit, lifting real wages is a key issue when business, unions and politicians meet here in Canberra. Let's get some analysis with Pradeep Phillip. He's the head of Deloitte Access Economics. Pradeep, I was very interested to read your piece in The Australian in the last week, talking about the need not just for wages to rise, but profits as well.
Absolutely, Kieran. We've just recorded a near 50-year record low on unemployment. But that's precisely the right time for us to be thinking ahead. And when you look under the hood of the economy, you realise there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of volatility, and there's also fragility. And that fragility comes from three things. One is that even though the profit share of the economy has gone up over the last 25 years, it's predominantly been driven by the mining sector. So the rest of the private sector hasn't been doing as well as it probably should. Second, we know that real wages haven't been growing anywhere near as fast as it should, in fact, gone backwards in recent times. And the third is that productivity has tanked. So this Jobs and Skills Summit is a really important time to rebuild consensus for reform to not only lift wages in the economy, but also profits driven by productivity.
Your call for consensus, it looks a bit fragile at the moment, given the meeting's going to be held a week from today, but there is a real split today when it comes to the ACTU's called for sector or industry-wide bargaining. The business community says that's like going back to the 70s in terms of policy.
Kieran, people are reverting to type. Our problem is not necessarily industrial relations, it's about broader economic reform, and for that we need unions and business and government at the table, developing a consensus that drives dynamism and competition in the economy, a consensus that lifts investment and productivity, and a consensus that lifts skills in the economy. Skills is often an afterthought, and we only think about it when we have a skills crisis. Actually, skills should be a driver of meeting the challenges like technology and climate change rather than an afterthought.
So do you believe that on that front, the skills front, there can be consensus despite the differences, maybe the hot air leading into it?
Absolutely. One thing that should unite business and the union movement is skills. Business is crying out right now because they face shortages of workers with skills. And it's also been a long-standing tradition of the union movement to promote skills development in Australia for workers. And this is really important because this will boost productivity in the economy along with good investment in machinery and equipment and innovation.
The union movement has said that wages are not even keeping up with the sluggish productivity growth. Is that right?
Yes, it is. And there are lag effects. The key way to lift real wages and also deal with profits is to lift productivity because, Kieran, wages are income for workers and they're a cost for business. So the best way to afford all that is to lift productivity in the economy.
Ministers have been holding portfolio-specific roundtables, a number of them. I spoke to the Tourism and Trade Minister earlier. He's been focusing on hospitality. I think many of our viewers would know the shortages that are there right across the country, but also the Climate and Energy Roundtable. The minister's talking about 600,000 new jobs in that sector by 2030. Is that achievable?
Absolutely, and we must achieve it. Right? Because in the absence of tackling climate change, our economy will tank and jobs will be lost. Whereas if you tackle climate change and the energy transition we need, we will actually lift the economy's growth rate and that'll create jobs. And if you think about the different sectors, the energy sector is going to look very different in 2050, as it should. If we achieve net zero, the structure of our economy will be different, whether it's in transport. If you think about electric vehicles, slow growth now, but it will take off. It will define the transport sector in the future. If we think about manufacturing, the energy that will power manufacturing will be different. The things we create will be different. And if we think about the energy sector alone, hydrogen will be a completely new industry, creating lots of jobs for people. So this is doable, but we have to invest now in the technology and, importantly, the skills that we need to realise those dividends.
Some of the technology, are you talking about infrastructure, for example, when it comes to transmission for renewables? but for EVs, electric vehicles, charging stations.
Absolutely. Charging stations will be the new petrol stations of the future. And if you think about the energy market, the transmission grid needs to be completely revamped, and a whole new industry like hydrogen will be created. And that will drive jobs not only in the hydrogen sector, but also in manufacturing around the country.
When it comes to electric vehicles, is it just about emissions standards? Is that the silver bullet to get that trajectory you're talking about, that trajectory of growth?
It's a combination of things. One is I think we need to get general demand up. Second is we need to get the incentives right around pricing to get people to adopt this technology. And then third, vehicle standards will be another element in driving uptake of electric vehicles.
Pradeep, Philip, we wish you all the best for a big week ahead with the summit and so on, and look forward to hearing your analysis. Thank you as always. Thank you. Pradeep Philip, Head of Deloitte Access Economics.